Thank you, Joanne. And thank you, everyone, for staying on, those of you who are staying on. So last year at this forum, Paul Sherlock and I launched the James Tizard Memorial Prize. The prize recognizes the contribution that James Tizard made to the research community and to the e-research scene, more specifically in his role as Chief Executive Officer of SabreNet, manager of the SubScience National Research Networks project, and all-round ability to motivate people to work together on research networks. James is greatly missed, and I think Paul is going to make a few more remarks about James in a moment. So the James Tizard Memorial Prize, funded by my department, awards $5,000 to a researcher who effectively demonstrates the role played by e-research infrastructure in driving and enabling their research. Following a process whereby we sought applications from the research sector at this time last year, and we received a range of different applications. We went through a process of selection conducted by the department and the Australian E-Research Infrastructure Council to determine a prize recipient, and I'm very glad today to announce that we selected Dr. Scott Condy from CSIRO as the prize recipient. And Scott is sitting next to Joanne, and he's about to tell you about all of his research and what was enabled by his research. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Scott Condy before I hand over to Paul, if that's all right, Paul? Okay, then. So Scott has been working particularly in the area of marine and coastal research, as I understand it. He's been the primary author on more than 30 scientific papers in internationally refereed journals, and has contributed to more than 40 reports for CSIRO stakeholders. And he's worked in a number of institutions, not only here, but in the US. He was a University Corporation for Atmospheric Research Fellow at the University of Washington in the US, and he has also been the Australian Research Council's Kevin Stark Fellow at the Australian National University. So Dr. Condy has led large integrated studies on the Northwest Shelf and the New South Wales coast, as well as the development of the marine connectivity tool known as CONI. And in particular, I think his research has involved developing new visualization tools operating over marine data, providing researchers for the first time anywhere access to the results of complex hydrodynamic models in the form of data maps that are readily used by researchers. And these tools, as we understand it, have been integrated into a Nectar virtual lab investment, and with IMOS's, the Integrated Marine Observation Systems, and CSIRO's Marine Computing Environment. I will now hand over to Paul, who has a few more remarks to make and will officially present the prize to Scott. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'd like to start by saying I think the department are to be congratulated for establishing this prize. It's quite a targeted prize in that it rewards the work of an outstanding researcher while highlighting the central role that e-research infrastructure has played in that research. And indeed the criteria for the prize not only encompasses the originality and the quality and the potential impact of the research, but also how that e-research infrastructure has made it possible. James would have been delighted, of course, to know that a prize had been established in his honour. He was humble. He was a humble man, but as Cheryl said, he made a significant contribution to the e-research landscape in three key ways. He was the inaugural CEO of SabreNet, which is a telecommunications company owned by the 3 universities and the state government in South Australia, which delivers advanced networking to universities, teaching hospitals, TAFEs, DSTO, CSIRO and schools in South Australia. He was Executive Director of e-Research SA at a time it was transitioning from being a node of the Australian Partnership for Advanced Computing into a full e-research services organisation, and finally at the time of his death in August last year he was the Project Director for the National Research Network project. We've also remembered him locally in South Australia through the establishment of a memorial lecture which we had a few weeks ago, and also the e-Research SA supercomputer has become known as the Tizard, which I think he would have also been pleased about. Dr. Scott Condy is a very worthy recipient of the James Tizard Memorial Award. His research, which we'll hear about shortly, has resulted in the development of some innovative online tools that put the users of the marine dispersal information in the hands of researchers, managers and educators. Importantly though, and that's what we're going to hear about, Scott's work builds on the other e-research developments in CSIRO and elsewhere, and leverages aspects of the key e-research infrastructure programs, including the NRN, ANZ and NECTAR. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Scott Condy to the microphone.
Okay. Well, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Paul, and thank you to the department. It's certainly a great honour to receive the James Tizard Prize. So I've never had the pleasure to know James, but certainly from what I've read and what we've heard today, he was a remarkably innovative person and certainly somebody who had that ability to motivate others and really get things done. So if the work that we've been doing in some small way can sort of capture those values, then that's great. So we might just, I'm going to give you a short presentation now on the work that led to the prize. Thank you. Okay. So as some of you would be aware, over the last decade there's been nothing less than probably a revolution in the field of oceanography, and this has been based on a few things. Firstly, the way we observe the ocean has changed dramatically in terms of autonomous methods of making those observations, which has meant the amount of data we have is just huge compared to what it used to be. And that data has fed into typically data assimilating models, which has really taken us now to a point where we've got something that's more like the meteorologists have just in terms of their weather prediction systems. And the way that this information then is delivered to stakeholders is also starting to develop. We have sort of near real-time forecasting that's coming out of those models, and that gives us sort of basic information on things like sea surface temperature, current patterns, and that sort of thing. You can access a certain amount of this sort of data in other ways, just over the internet, mainly in terms of seeing images and so on. But the thing that struck us was within these data assimilating models, there's actually a huge amount of valuable information that hasn't been delivered in sort of these traditional ways. And so what we would like to do is essentially make that information available to everybody from researchers right through to school students, I guess. And part of that is going from the sort of binary data that you can download, gives people headaches at the moment, netcdf files and so on, to tools that people can just sit down at their computers and use. So this is really the challenge that we set ourselves. We want something completely open and online access for information related to not just the properties like sea surface temperature and things, but the type of information that people really want, which in this case is often about where things go in the ocean, where are they carried by the ocean currents. And so this comes to this question of ocean dispersal. The second characteristic we want is we want rapid analysis. This is obviously essential if you're dealing with an online tool. You know, it's not much point if you get the answer in an hour or a day or something. You really need to get that down to seconds. And the added advantage of this is it gives the user the ability to start sort of exploring uncertainties and looking at trade-offs between different options in a sort of rapid, interactive way. We also need flexible outputs. We want to see graphical representation, visualisation, and have people to be able to actually access the numbers in various forms that they're used to using, whether it be CSV files in their Excel spreadsheets or KML to put in their Google Earth type applications. And the fourth thing we wanted a pretty intuitive sort of tool. So minimal training. So, I think what we've finally come up with is something that if people sort of play with for an hour, they've pretty much got it, even though it's based on some very sophisticated data underlying it, it has minimal training requirements. And so there's the result is this online tool. There's the address there. Probably if everybody who has a device in front of them logs on right now, you could probably crash it. So I'm a researcher. I'm not a software engineer. So I'm going to really be talking about the application here, not so much the technical stuff. But essentially, it's a combination of MATLAB, Python, and Java programming environments that have been used in the development of this. So if you just get onto that website, this is essentially what comes up. And at the moment, that's just showing the regions that it's been implemented so far. There's Mediterranean one, there's a large region around Southeast Asia and Australia, and there's another sort of high resolution region around the Great Barrier Reef because of the particular interest in that area. And we've got plans for other regions going both smaller scale into estuaries and going global. With this. So if you select on one of those areas, essentially this is sort of view you can sort of zoom in and out in the usual sort of way and pan around in the way that people are used to. And there's a relatively small number of parameters now that the user needs to set. If you get in there, you essentially select what period you're interested in. So this is based on data that's being generated from a reanalysis that covers past years. So at the moment we're in the sort of this hindcast mode, and you can set some other things like how long are you interested in this thing dispersing for, what sort of depth in the ocean you're worried about, and various other things around the actual the type you're present, the way that the information is actually presented. And once you've set those relatively few parameters, you can go into more detail in terms of the way those the things that have been dispersed behave. But as a minimum, that's pretty much it. And then essentially what this toolkit does is go away. It uses particle tracking techniques, so it's actually doing some modelling in the background, and then it's actually visualising the results. And as I said, it's got to do all this. The main challenge has actually been making it do all this fast enough, because it actually has to do all this, in whatever, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, and so on. Oops. Okay, so just to give you a sort of sense of why is this really important in the ocean, here's an example of what the tool generated. And what we're looking at here, if we consider, a small area around Lord Howe, and we ask the question, well, where's the water that's coming into Lord Howe and the organisms within that water actually coming from? And if you went back, say, 5 or 10 years, To answer that question, you'd have to set up a project. You'd have to do the modelling of the hydrodynamics of the system. You'd have to do the particle tracking modelling. So you're probably talking about a project that would take you 12 months or more. And so this can now sort of do that in whatever it is, 30 seconds or something. And so what we're showing here is this is the footprint essentially of where all that water's coming from over I think this one's a 60-day period. And it gives you a sense of how much we really need to worry about this sort of thing in the ocean, because that water mass is passing by Lord Howe. It might be bringing organisms and so on from all the way from the southern Great Barrier Reef right down to Bass Strait. So, you could be getting, in principle at least, if they can survive, jellyfish from both those areas could be flying past there. Okay, so you can also put in things about, you can specify various behaviours that you want you're doing this particle tracking. A lot of things, biological organisms have behaviours that you want to be able to specify, and you can do this in a reasonably sophisticated way in terms of various options about their swimming behaviour. You can do multi-phase things, so as these organisms grow, they may change their behaviour, and you want to be able to represent that as well. And just to give you a sense of how that can affect, how that behaviour can affect things, if you consider an organism on the left there, it stays up in the top of the water column. There's the sort of footprint of how it disperses again away from Lord Howe. If you consider something that migrates each day up and down the water column, perhaps they're avoiding predators during daylight hours, visual predators, so they come down, which is very common, then you get quite a different pattern. Okay. Second quick example, an oil spill. That's the sort of dispersion pattern that you get immediately for something that's dissolved in the water column. If you something that's actually forming a slick, you'll get quite a different pattern. In this case, going much further westward because of the winds. Okay, I'll just skip that. So just moving on to how this has developed and how it's developing in the future in terms of how we're funding it and so on. I guess the main point here is we've received, once we had this initial funding, we got a basic tool developed. We're now getting actually quite a diversity of funding. There's a lot of interest on the Great Barrier Reef. We're getting funding through the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority about how the reefs across that entire system are connected up. More funding from the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation about the impact of things like salmon ponds in southern Tasmania, and looking at trade-offs between different sectors. Importantly for this particular forum, we have some funding through Nectar in one of the virtual labs. That's a marvellous project which Roger Proctor's going to be talking about in more detail tomorrow, but that's really about how the shellfish aquaculture is affected by freshwater inputs. So it's very important to know how does the freshwater get from runoff, during rain events to the areas where the shellfish are. Also about water quality on beaches, explaining, well, why is the water quality poor, and then getting into the idea of making predictions about where that's going. And finally, the last one there, we've got some more internal funding, which is going to move this to a more global thing. So just in conclusion there, so Connie, I think, is that we've actually got a tool here that delivers not only to marine research, but also into the education sector, from sort of university level, even down to a little bit of use by primary schools. Managers can use it directly. So, not everybody can make, I guess, not all applications. You can have a tool that covers that breadth. We were sort of lucky in that sense, but that's what we have. And in terms of the attributes that bring us to success, I guess, are around the easy access, the rapid analysis, and the idea that you don't need a lot of training. And in the future, the future lies in better integration with other research initiatives, going to more tailored products for new applications, and going global, I guess. Okay, thank you very much.
There's time for a couple of quick questions. So, are there any questions from the floor? Question here.
Hi, it's a great presentation, a very exciting tool with lots of applications. The amount of time that you've spent sort of designing and developing, and your input into that, is that, I don't want to get you offside with CSIRO, but how does that work in your professional development as a researcher?
Yes, so I mean, in terms of CSIRO's mission and so on, I think it's entirely consistent. And certainly CSIRO have been very supportive. I guess as a researcher, there's some trade-offs there in terms of the time that goes into that is probably time not spent, in the more traditional publishing arena. I suppose there's some risks associated with that, but on the other hand, I think these sort of approaches, these sort of tools are being much more appreciated now. This particular tool, I think, has a fairly high profile in the marine science community. So, from my personal perspective, I think it's been all very positive. But, I guess that is a little bit of a culture change. But in terms of certainly where our organisation's going, I think it's very well aligned.
Other questions? I've got a question. Does this have a strong commercial application? Was this the Blue Link project that was also done with the Navy and commercial freight, movement of freight by ships?
Yes, so in terms of the Blue Link project and so on, this is very much building on that as one of the potential data sets that flows into it, certainly not the only one. So it's more generic than that. I think there is potential for some commercial development in terms of very tailored applications. We purposefully kept this, as in terms of the basic tool, as open as possible, and that's been our philosophy. It's mostly been pretty much funded by public monies, and I think it's entirely appropriate that everybody in Australia and hopefully worldwide should benefit. But I think it's something that we can build on if as opportunities arise to make a more commercial product as appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I think they're all getting hungry.
Okay.
So I'd like to thank Scott once more for his excellent presentation, and congratulations on your prize. Thank you.
Thanks very much.